Hi, welcome to Father of Games. Today we're looking at the Viticulture World expansion for Viticulture. Now this expansion drastically changes the game. It takes Viticulture, a game where players are working against each other to build the most successful vineyard, and it puts those players on the same team to build a successful vineyard together with ever-changing conditions depending on what continent you're trying to build that vineyard in. So this expansion is not a standalone expansion. The base game is required to use it, and any expansions can be used as well. And because of that, I'm not going to be going over the rules for the base game because you should hopefully already know how to use that. I'm just going to be going over the new changes this expansion brings, and also there is a solo mode to this as well that I will not be covering in this video. But other than that, let's take a look at what new changes this expansion brings. Place the new double-sided Viticulture board on the table. If playing with the Tuscany expansion, the side of the board with the orange card slot showing is used. Otherwise, use the reverse side of the board as shown. If this is your first time with this expansion, remove all the white border cards that match the new black border cards with the same artwork. The white border cards will never be used again, and if one of the black border cards is drawn during a game with this expansion, set it aside and draw a new card instead. After that, shuffle each small deck and add them to their corresponding spots on the board. Each player then grabs the usual 3 field cards and all components of a color of their choice, and after that, each player adds 2 blue and 2 yellow fashionable hats to their workers, returning the 5th regular worker to the box. When that's done, choose an event deck. For the first game, or first several games in my case, the introductory Green Gully event deck is recommended. To set up with this deck, put the 6 cards in numerical order from 1 to 6 face down on the board here with the number 1 card on top. If using any other event deck instead, then shuffle the deck and deal out 6 cards randomly on the board here. Now follow any initial setup shown on the setup card for the event deck, and after that, shuffle the new red and blue cards into the Mama and Papa decks and draw 1 of each card as normal, taking the starting resources shown on the card. Regardless of what cards are drawn, when using this expansion, each player starts with 4 regular workers and 1 grande worker as shown. After that, unless playing a solo game, remove any of the new innovation tiles that show this symbol in the top right corner and place the remaining tiles near the game board, along with all lira, the new event token, and grape and wine tokens. And finally, deal out 2 of each type of innovation tile to the spaces on the board and place the grape token at 0, each player's score marker at 0, and each player's residual payment token at 0 as normal, and add the gray worker on the wake up position here and place the influence token on the space on the board that represents your player count. And with that, the setup is complete. Now as mentioned, this expansion makes a once competitive game into a cooperative one, where all players win or lose together. To win, each player must reach a minimum of 25 points and the influence token must end at 10. If a player ever reaches 30 points, then gain 1 influence. As a team, you have 6 rounds to achieve a victory. Now other than the new board, the first gameplay change you'll notice during the game is the event deck. The event deck represents different regions throughout the world that you and your fellow players are trying to build successful wineries in. At the start of each year, draw the top card of the event deck and read the text aloud. As the name suggests, the event deck will feature events that are taking place each year, and they can be good or bad depending on what's written on the card. Now to avoid spoilers, I won't show any examples, but just know that sometimes these events will cause certain locations on the board to become stronger or weaker, in which case the event token is placed at that location as a reminder to refer to the event card when visiting this location. Each year's new event card will replace the one from the year before. Another change is the wake-up chart, or pecking order as I like to call it. It works the same way as the one from the base game, but looks a little different. And since players are now on a team, you must decide together where to place each player's rooster. The player on the first location will draw the chosen benefit as shown on their space, and they'll place the first worker for summer as normal, and then the next player in the pecking order will gain their selected benefit and place a worker, and so on. When a player passes and proceeds to autumn, they move their rooster into the inner circle, gaining one of the 3 benefits shown on the board. So that brings me to another change in this expansion, these weird looking hats. As mentioned, each player starts the game with 2 blue-hatted workers and 2 yellow-hatted workers. These are called seasonal workers, and as I'm sure you've guessed by now, the yellow-hatted workers can only be placed at summer locations, and the blue-headed workers can only be placed at winter locations. Now this is a bit limiting, but as an action during winter, a worker may be placed here to pay 4 lira to train a worker, which simply means one hat from one of your workers can be removed, creating a trained worker that can be placed at any location for the rest of the game. Now if you remember the board from the base game of Viticulture, it had 3 location icons at each location, some of which had bonuses for placing a worker there, and a certain number of locations were only used depending on the player count. This new board only has 2 location icons. Only 1 worker can be placed at each location if playing with less than 4 players, and there's no bonuses for placing a worker at any location. But the board can be upgraded to change this, as we'll see a little later. But as similar to the base game, grande workers can be placed at any location at any time during that season, and if placed at a location with another player's worker, then you may make any trade with that player, as shown on the board here. Now on the board you'll see many of the same locations as the base game, and a few new ones. I'm not going to go over all the pre-existing ones, as they should already be familiar to returning players, but let's go over the new ones now. The first new location is this one here, which allows the active player to trade in any of the shown resources to gain one of the other shown resources. For example, 3 lira could be traded in for 1 point, or 2 cards could be traded in for a 1 value red or white grape. The location beside that allows players to buy innovation tiles, which I'll cover in just a minute, but moving on to the new winter locations, the first new winter location here allows the active player to sell one of their wines for an equal number of lira from the supply. And finally beside that location is this one, which allows the active player to pay 8 lira to gain 1 experience, which is a high price to pay, but remember players need to get to 10 experience in order to win. So now for the final location. This one you'll want to visit frequently to have any chance of success. This location allows the active player to pay 4 lira to buy one of the face-up innovation tiles and place it on the board. So just what are innovation tiles? Good question. They are tiles that are placed on the board that give the shown location a stronger ability for the rest of the game. The ovaled innovation tiles are placed at any location on the board, covering up the locations as shown. Any reward shown on the board may be instantly gained. For example, this location allows all players to gain 1 point as shown. Once placed, these ovaled innovation tiles remove the limit of how many workers can occupy that location, and also any trained workers, grande workers, or the gray temporary worker gain the benefits shown on the tile anytime they visit that location. Now most of these rewards are self-explanatory, except for these arrows, which simply mean you gain the reward of an ovaled innovation tile in the direction that they point. For example, if this location was visited, then the reward above it, in this case 1 green vine card, would be immediately gained. On some of the ovaled innovation spaces, a coin cost is showing instead of a listed reward. That amount of lira must be paid immediately to place an ovaled innovation tile in that location. So that's how the ovaled innovation tiles work. The rectangular ones work in a similar way, except they each relate to a specific location on the board. If chosen, put the rectangular innovation tile on the space on the board with the matching letter. There's no added cost or benefit to playing rectangular innovation tiles, and they make the action at the location they're present in stronger for the rest of the game. For example, this location lets players pay 8 lira to gain 1 experience, but if upgraded by the matching innovation tile, it would instead only cost 6 lira to gain 1 experience at that location, and that player could also build 1 structure for free, which is a super helpful ability, so adding these innovation tiles early and frequently is very important. All innovation tiles do not replenish after being chosen, they are instead replenished at the start of each new year. Now play continues the same way as normal for 6 years, with the only difference being that when a player passes in winter, they remove all figures from the board, potentially freeing up some spaces for other players. At the end of the 6th year, if all players have at least 25 points each, and the influence marker is at 10, then congratulations, you all win the game. But if not, maybe stick to beer instead, because your wine business has failed. And that's how you play with the Viticulture World expansion. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave me a comment down below. I'll answer anything I can. But other than that, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.